Good morning. Welcome to our World of Business Professional panel, sponsored by the Montahoosia College of Business and our Office of Multicultural Engagement and Inclusion. My name is Mary Rivnak. I'm the co-chair of our Dean's Diversity Council. Today we have a distinguished panel of both alumni and professionals here to share with you their career journeys, how they got where they are today, and some steps that you might take to get where you would like to go. Today's moderator is Professor Ashutosh Dixit. He's a professor of marketing, teaching both global business as well as marketing research. Professor Dixit.
Thank you, Dr. Hunak, for the kind introduction and for arranging for this wonderful panel. Let me first talk a little bit about the four distinguished panelists, and thank you for your time, for coming over and talking to our students. And I think some of you are alumni as well, so thank you very much once again. And there are four of you. Let me start with Robert. And Robert is at NASA. He's the business capture manager, and he has a long-term relationship with CSU, and I'll request them, once it comes to them, that they introduce themselves. And Robert has been doing some very exciting projects with the marketing students. Ms. Eleanor Hayes, she's the Director of Communication, Human Resources Division in the Cleveland Clinic, and she's a very good communicator, and she has won a lot of Emmy Awards and different awards to her credit, and we'll ask her about some questions about the global, because Cleveland Clinic is moving into a global space right now, so she'll be discussing about that. Then we have Councilman Anthony Hairston, and Anthony has been a student of mine, and he has been here at Cleveland State, and he has done a great job. He received various awards from one, for example, was from the President's Educational Achievement Award from President Bush, and then he's serving right now as a councilman. So welcome, Councilman. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Linda Bluso, and she is also an alumni, and she consults in the areas of strategic management, strategic collaborations, alliances, corporate governance, and enterprise risk management, to mention a few things. She's a BA in psychology and JD from our Cleveland Marshall College of Law. So welcome all the panelists, and thank you once again for your time. Briefly about myself, I'll take 2 minutes to give you a brief career background and how I landed up in education. So I started my undergrad as a mechanical engineer, and I was all about mathematics, sciences, engineering. And when I completed my undergraduate, I was thinking what to do next, and I had some good job offers. So I was thinking whether to take a job or to go in for higher studies, and I was talking to my friends. And then people said that go in for an MBA, because an MBA will broaden your perspective a lot. So I had no knowledge of other software subjects. I was totally a hardcore math, science, engineering person. And then I was thinking about it, and my mother was very interested that I go and start working, because she wanted me out of the house and to make some money. And then I said that, okay, I want to go and do an MBA. And then she said, okay, I'll support you for 2 more years. So then I did my MBA, and it was a huge change in the broadening of the perspectives. So I did not know economics, and all I knew was about economics was that economists are people who are looking for a black cat in a dark room. So those were the things I'd heard about it, but I did not know much about it. And I did not know much about psychology. So all those things, when I went accounting, I did not know much about accounting or finance. So I was a hardcore math, science, engineering undergraduate, and once I went there, then the world suddenly, it broadened my perspective so much that I could see the other disciplines. So that was one of the examples in diversity, and Then, like, I started working in a company in the marketing role. I was a marketing executive. So I was dealing with a lot of people from diverse backgrounds, and understanding of diversity was very useful because once you have to interact with someone who's from a different background, different age group, different gender, different cultural background, so you need to appreciate those things. And if you take some international business courses, you will appreciate that how things are different in different cultures. Signals are different, how you greet people are different. So everything is very different, and people might take offense or they might like you very much if you know those differences. So it becomes very important for students to understand diversity and then how to interact in a global world to take advantage of that diversity. And in businesses, also, diversity means that a lot of innovation is there, and because of different cultures, because the different ways different people grow up in different cultures, they may lead to more brainstorming ideas and higher innovation. So it is the differences that make us stronger rather than the similarities, because if everyone is doing the same thinking, everyone is thinking the same way, maybe you miss out on some of the innovative ideas. So that is my background. Then I went for my doctorate in Georgia Tech, and I've been teaching for about 15 years, 10 years in CSU. So if you take any international business courses or marketing research, maybe you'll meet with me in those courses. And with that, I'll open it up for the panelists. Once again, thank you very much for talking to us. And why don't we start with 15 minutes where each of the panelists I'll request to describe their career journey and what are the major opportunities that you got, what were the major challenges, how you made best of your education. So if you can start with that. And we'll start with Ms. Hayes, and we'll go in the line, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for that, and then we have a few questions that we'll pose to the panelists. So,
Dr.
please go
Dixon,
ahead.
thank you very much, and it's wonderful to be here with the students today. I have very fond memories of this room because clearly it was where we first gathered on the day of graduation when I was getting my MBA to bring our class together, our IMBA group. So I have great memories and always enjoy coming back to campus, especially spending time here at the business college. I've had an opportunity in my professional journey to have a number of different careers. And little did I know from a very young age that I was really living in a diverse world. It really just what it was. It was life. I was raised in a community in the Mount Pleasant area of Cleveland where there was a mixture of a lot of Eastern Europeans and African Americans and whites in the area. So we had a blend, and culturally, that's what we were all about. So now we talk about diversity and we talk about global environments, but really it was the neighborhood, and that was the way that we grew up. So you started to become attuned to learning about different cultures, hearing different languages, and sharing, what's different, but more importantly, what's alike about your neighbors and your friends and your classmates. Then going on through school, we moved to Shaker Heights, so I had a number of opportunities to travel outside of the country to study. Through college at Oberlin, I majored in government and communications and continued to expand my horizons once I had developed this interest in communications. And then professionally, first starting off in radio and then moving on into television for communications, news reporting, and anchoring for a long time. And all along, I always believed that whatever I communicated professionally or whatever I shared, that there was a global audience. I never thought that because I'm broadcasting from here in Cleveland, that that's the only audience that's going to get this message. Or when I move to another city, whether it's Nashville, Milwaukee, Columbus, or anywhere where I may have reported. And it wasn't just the opportunities to report from Europe and Cuba and other places around the globe. it was that we are messengers all over, and whatever we share is going to be shared at least tenfold. Fast forward to my business experience, I decided to follow in my family footsteps. I became a business owner for a while and operated McDonald's restaurants as an owner-operator for about 10 years. And from the very beginning, literally from my class at Hamburger University, where we've got students coming from around the globe, where we're all making hamburgers the very same way, whether you're in Brazil or whether you're in China or whether you're in Cleveland, you learn that really what's the difference? The difference is how you train a crew person perhaps in a different language, and culturally how you interact. So again, it seemed to me to be in my face that we were talking about work, specific work and hard work in the space, in the area of pushing diversity, because I was living in this global environment. I returned to television anchoring for a while and was anchoring out of Columbus until I got a call from Cleveland Clinic, and it just seemed to fit. Come here and help us manage and lead some of our diversity student pipeline programs. So that's what I did, as well as took advantage of the opportunity to use my communication skills. So now what I do as a director of communications at Cleveland Clinic is I help to tell the story about caregivers around the globe. I don't have to be in Abu Dhabi right now to tell you about the great things that we're doing over there as we get ready to build a hospital, because with technology we're able to share that experience. And so what I'd like to impart, and what we'll get a little bit more of a chance to talk about today, is each and every experience that we have in school as well as professionally gives us a chance to touch our neighbor, classmate, friend, family member, and potential colleague. Not only next door, but literally miles away next door. And I believe that's what it's all about when we talk about the global impact that we can have right here from Cleveland State.
Let me see if I can take it from here. Let me start from another perspective in terms of how my career journey occurred. Born in Lorain, Ohio, a Northeast Ohio, native I call. Graduated in the Lorain public school system, and I would say that I was not college ready. Lorain public schools obviously weren't ranked the highest, in the state, and probably still the case now. And the idea of going to college was really something that was a dream for me, but it didn't hit reality until I decided to go to the Bowling Green State University in a remedial course. They offer a remedial course back then, where I could at least build some of my skills necessary to get into college. Another thing I want to point out along those lines is a language barrier. I had challenge. My first language is Spanish. My parents were born in Puerto Rico, migrated to the U.S., and so I had to kind of shift my ability to learn and command the English language. And I'll tell you one thing that became significantly obvious to me when I decided to go to Bowling Green, and it came to a point where I couldn't craft a sentence or a composition if my life depended on it. It was then that I realized I have a challenge before me, but a challenge that I overcame. I'm kind of a driven type person anyways. Most people who know me, I get excited over challenges, so I call those opportunities, of course. And as a result, I had a great mentor, the director of the Romance language. She was the chair of the Romance language for Bowling Green State University. And she took me on as a project. I became kind of a project for her. And actually she assigned a TA, a graduate student, who actually did a report about inner city kids, trying to overcome challenges. And I just happened to be one of those type of kids. And through this particular experience, I actually built my capabilities. And I'm so grateful for her and that student. I really am. Also realized that through this mentoring opportunity that I needed to get involved. I need to get involved because, number one, I'm going to make sure that I get the education I missed. So that was one point. But also the idea of leadership. the idea of getting involved with students and making sure other students don't go through what I went through. So I got involved with student organizations, the undergraduate student government. I became chair of the student fee allocation board. That's a big deal because you think about the president of undergraduate student government or government, that they kind of have a lot of influence on policy within college. But imagine that I am the chair of the student fee allocation board. All the Greeks, all the student organizations, et cetera, had to come through this board to get their funding. So Robert Romero became more popular than the president of undergraduate student and student senate, for that matter, because I actually had, the money. So when you have the money, you kind of have. So I learned early on leadership, being able to build strong relationships, and understanding knowledge and power and influence and what all that means. So I learned that early on. I graduated with a degree in communications, and one of my greatest accomplishments in college was that the university president, I guess they award 1 or 2 in the entire college every year graduating, a university's distinguished service award, which was presented to us at the president's residence. My parents were invited. It was just a great experience, and I'll tell you, get involved. That's my point. Get involved early on. Your freshmen, learn to know what's out there and how you can be involved, and get involved with diverse groups. Don't stay focused on the things that you know, but expand your mind. Again, I would say I also got involved early on with the opportunities to do some internships, co-ops. And so I got in a co-op position end of my sophomore year, junior year. I took advantage of that and landed a job with the federal government. First professional job, worked with IRS. And after I graduated, was offered a full-time job. It was great experience. I've stayed connected with the community. Again, my understanding of being involved with professional organizations and student organizations was critical. And as a result, I met a good friend of mine who was a deputy personnel officer for NASA. And he hired me. He said, hey, I need to bring you in. You've got some skills that we need at NASA. So I was hired and held a variety of positions. The one key opportunity I had was because of my leadership skills and my skills that I developed over time, I became a senior manager. I reported to the NASA center director for 9 years. And there were 4 different center directors. So talk about diversity from different leadership styles, diversity from different, 2 African Americans, 1 white male, 1 white female. So I worked with 3 different leaders. All of them have different leadership styles. Things that you can learn, the things I learned in college have really benefited me in my career. I will say this, that I also, as a result of that, I had the pleasure of working with CSU as an executive in residence 3 years in a row. That opportunity would have happened to me had I not built relationships. It's all about relationships. It's all about understanding who you are, where you want to go in the future, and then go out there and seek it. And as freshmen, I encourage you to do that. That's my story.
That's impressive. Hi, I'm Linda Bluso. Thank you for your interest in my story, and thanks for being here. I know you guys are getting credit for this, but it's still, you could have, called in sick or something, so I'm glad you're here. How many of you are born and raised in Cleveland? Or the suburbs, okay? So majority of you. That's my story. Born, raised, and educated here in Cleveland. Didn't have the experience of living elsewhere and coming back to the city or whatever. So, but I do have the perspective of seeing how Cleveland State University has really evolved as a great, not just a commuter school. And when I went here, it was a commuter school. Didn't have the engagement that I see. I go to the basketball games here sometimes, and I see the engagement of the students, and it's just great to see the new dorms. It's wonderful, and I wished that I had had that experience coming here and going to undergraduate classes during the day. So I had a little different, kind of an alternative kind of career path as far as my college studies. And I had to pay my way through college. I'm a first-generation college student in my family. and my family gave me a place to stay and a car to drive. And so I had to find a job, and I was doing secretarial work, but I wasn't a really good typist. So I ended up studying to be a paralegal. And that was a brand new profession back then. And I got a great job working downtown. So I figured, well, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I had a lot of high school friends that were going to become lawyers. And we had this desire. We were all going to go out and change the world. And that's what I wanted to do. So I became a paralegal, and I did that job during the day, and then I came to Cleveland State at night and studied. And I did that for a few years, and I got so tired of doing that program that I just decided, well, I'm going to go to school full-time and do my full-time job. Believe it or not, I did it. I graduated magna cum laude, and I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And I think the busier I was, the more organized I was, and I focused on studying. So then I decided, okay, it's time for law school. And I decided to work part-time and go to school full-time here at Cleveland State. Got a great education. Actually, I was accepted at Case and Cleveland State and the University of Michigan. And I was talking to my attorneys that I knew as a paralegal. And I said, I just don't know where to go. And they said, well, do you want to stay in Cleveland? And I said, yeah. My family's here, I have a pretty close-knit Italian family and wanted to stay here. So they said, go to Cleveland State. If you want to practice law, you get a great education at Cleveland State. And they were right, because at the time, all the professors at Case had to mandatorily retire, and they would come to Cleveland State to teach. And these were eminent professors. I had a professor that taught us a lot of civil procedure and different law classes. He was in the Nuremberg war trials. Do you guys know about Nuremberg and World War II? He was one of the prosecuting attorneys. He was just phenomenal. Anyway, I got a great education. So I started in a law firm here in Cleveland, a larger law firm, but I had always had this desire to start a law firm. And two guys that I went to law school with and I started a law firm here in Cleveland. And we grew it, and we grew it to a pretty large law firm in Ohio. And we were recognized on Crane's list, and I think the firm still is recognized on Crane's list. Crane's Cleveland Business, that's a business journal. I hope you guys know what it is. Okay. And after 19 years of doing that, and I was administrative partner, so I had a lot of leadership roles and on the executive committee, and with 60 attorneys at that time, it was and 5 offices in Ohio, it was a pretty big deal. And I decided, I basically left after 19 years, and I went to another law firm. And that was a regional firm with headquarters in Akron, and they were looking for somebody to help them build their profile in Cleveland, because they had opened up, Akron law firms at that time were starting to open up little satellite offices in Cleveland. And they needed people with some Cleveland ties to come and join them. So they recruited me, and at the time I saw that my practice had plateaued, and I wanted to really launch a larger practice and give my clients a little bit more depth in certain areas that they needed. I was a business and real estate lawyer. And so I left, and then I became partner in charge of that Cleveland office. And then in 2008, the recession hit. You all know about that, right? And all the business deals that I was doing just completely died in the water. There was no money. Banks were not lending money for deals, transactions. But you know what? It was an opportunity. I had no work, no billable hours, no nothing, and the clients were just retrenching. They didn't want to use lawyers because they were really trying to save their money, save their cash. But it gave me a chance to think, and I said, do I still want to do this? Do I really want to be a lawyer anymore? It really was a reflection and an inflection point in my career. And that was one of my aha moments, like, yeah, maybe I don't want to read documents all day or do leases all day. And, you know, I love the business counseling part of helping a client, but man, maybe I don't want to do that. So I found an opportunity and I became head of the business school at Baldwin Wallace University. And I thought, at the first, when somebody gave me this opportunity, I said, what do I know about academia? I don't want to, I'm not qualified. Well, guess what? Don't ever do that. Because you know what? You can do whatever you set your mind to do. Because as it turns out, I did it, had a great run. I left after a little over 3 years, and now I'm doing strategic consulting and coaching and really helping companies figure out where they want to go or grow. And so anyway, if I hear the theme of diversity, what I'd like to do is tell you, okay, I'm a white girl from the suburbs in Cleveland. So I didn't see much diversity growing up. We saw Filipino students in our class and Chinese students every once in a while, very rare. But I really didn't have that diversity experience. And I had the experience of being the only woman in a room full of men as I was a lawyer, as I was a young lawyer. The number of women going to law school today far exceeds the numbers that I saw when I was going to law school. I would say there was about 25% women in our class, maybe 30% of women in our law class. And we were always in roomfuls of men. And back in the day, we used to wear the two-piece business suit. Skirt, though, couldn't wear pants. You had to wear your skirts and your hose. You never wore bare legs. And a nice little bow tie so you look like the boys, you know. White shirt, starched, you know. That was the day. That was how we started law. Now I can say that women don't look like that anymore when they work in a law firm. But that was a male-dominated field, and to see how you felt when you were the only woman in the room and were trying to be heard was, you know, that was my experience of diversity. So I look at my friends up here on the panel and I say to myself, I know how they feel. I know how they felt like they were the only black person in the room or the only Hispanic in the room. And so that's my perspective on what I had to go through.
All right, thank you. Well, as Dr. Disick said, I am Anthony Hairston. I currently serve as a Cuyahoga County Council person representing the 10th District. I'd just like to say hello to one of my constituents who walked in the room, Dr. Gaynor. How are you? My Cleveland Heights resident. But I'll be brief. I know we're running somewhat behind on time, and know others have things to do. And again, I appreciate all of you for coming out to listen to our spills this morning. My career journey is a bit different than the others that sit on the panel. First of all, I'm 28 years old. I was first elected to the county council at the age of 27. I have been involved in politics since I was about 15 years old. I started with my local elected, my local councilman. To me, all politics are local. We oftentimes put a lot of emphasis on the state level, federal level politics, but it starts in your backyard. It is your local council people. It is your municipal judges. It is your state legislators. It is your common pleas court judges that makes the difference in your life every day. It is that council person who wrote that legislation that you have to abide by, when to put your trash out, when to take your trash cans back in, when to get your kids off the street before it gets dark, or what rules you have to follow when turning at that red traffic light, or putting that seatbelt on, the dollar amount that you will be fined if you do not follow those rules. So again, all politics are local. Just a little bit about my background. I was raised in a union household. My grandfather was a 30-plus year member of the United Steelworkers of America. He worked for LTV Steel. You all know where the Steelyard Commons is? you know, where you see the smoke coming out the factories there. That was LTV steel, and before that it was J&L steel. So we go way back a long time. So my first involvement came from his work experience. His union paycheck had put me through college. His union paycheck took care of my mother, took care of her siblings throughout their lives. Growing up, I grew up in the St. Clair neighborhood, the Collinwood community on the Cleveland's east side. So that's where Collinwood, you know, where the St. Clair, the Lakeshore area. So that is where I grew up in Cleveland. I was the only child until about 10 years old. And I look up and I see another little person being brought into the world. What's going on? So now I'm starting to panic. Uh-oh, mom's not going to pay that much attention to me. Will I still get the same thing, those tennis shoes, those video games that you want? So as we move through life, my father was incarcerated for about 6 years of my life. So my mother truly was a single parent for the middle part of me growing up. Those adolescent times where you go through so much, where you know you're trying to really figure out yourself, who you are. And being a single parent who was young, who had the support of her parents, was still sort of difficult. Father was released. The good thing is that he came back into my life and picked up where he left off from. And like some of the other panelists said, that I am also the first generation of college student to come from my family. So my experience with diversity was not so much about ethnicity. It was about socioeconomic status. You know, I went to places where other people who may even looked like me was in a different social economic status than I was. I wasn't at the bottom, but I wasn't at the top. I fell right in between both, the low and the high. And as I moved on to my professional career, I worked for many industries, the automobile industry, worked for Classic Auto Group, worked for Cuyahoga Community College, worked for a private physician's office. From there, I went on to work for MBNA America Bank, working in the risk department for some time. And that is where my true interaction with diversity as it relates to ethnicity is where I began to experience those, because MBNA was a global organization. They dealt it with, you remember the Cleveland Browns owner, Al Lerner? He also started MBNA America Bank. So I was in my cubicle, I was to hear this helicopter land on the top of our building. What is that? The building started shaking. You knew when Mr. Lerner was coming to work because the building started to shake. You heard the helicopter rumbling. So that was my true experience as I began to deal with diversity. I was 17 years old when I got hired at MBNA Bank. I was a part of the workforce program through my high school. So you go to school for the first part of the morning, and then you work the second part. I had a teacher named Mr. Raymond Rollins who said, hey, listen, someone reached out, they're looking for students to get involved in their some diversity programs they have there. They want to create, like Cleveland Clinic says, this pipeline, this talent pipeline. And I interviewed, they liked what they saw, and they hired me. I couldn't start until I was 18. I turned 18 July 1st, right after I was hired for the position. And so as I worked through MBNA, got to know more folks, really got to experience some of those things about being the only black person in the room, or being the only young person in the room, sometimes being the only black and young person in the room. So, you know, for me, it's somewhat, it was somewhat difficult. But that taught me how to deal with situations that I face today in my current career as a council person. Many believe that I could not transition to suburban politics, that my politics was all urban, because those were the type of politics that I grew up around. Urban politics in Cleveland. Cleveland politics is urban. So you have your local councilmen who deal with your abandoned houses, your potholes, your waste collection, etc. But suburban politics is a bit much different. You have a lot of suburban politics that deal with issues of substance in terms of policy and how it creates and shapes things that will still be here when none of us are here and sitting around. So going into it, it was somewhat of a challenge, but I had great mentors such as Cleveland Councilman Jeff Johnson, former Congressman Louis Stokes. And, you know, I grew up around these very talented, these very knowledgeable people who many of you know from our community has represented for many years here in Northeast Ohio. Just to rewind a bit, I I worked on the campaign when I was 15 years old. It was the Raymond C. Pierce for Mayor campaign. Many of you may not know Raymond's story. Raymond was attorney here in Cleveland, Ohio. He was called by then President Bill Clinton to work as a chief of education, I believe, in Washington, D.C. Once that was over, Raymond decided to come back here and run for mayor of Cleveland. That is the same time when former Mayor Jane Campbell ran for office as well. I remember being interviewed by a reporter. When I was recently featured in the Cleveland Plain-Dealer as being seen by many as a Democratic rising star. And when the reporter came into the room, he said, "Do you remember this article?" I said, "No, not quite. I remember the campaign, but I don't quite remember the article." He said, "Well, here, take a look at it." And I do remember I was about 14, 15 years old, and I remember the experience. I remember the experience more than the interview because it was not about the interview. It was not about the publicity at that time. It was truly about helping the people. I saw how Raymond inspired people as they walked away, as he talked to people. It wasn't just your shuck and jive, your quick answers, or your say something to get them out of your face and turn around and do something other than what you said. But that campaign is what truly inspired me to continue a career path in politics, the Raymond C. Pierce for Mayor campaign. So as I went on, I told them as soon as I became of legal voting age, I'll run for councilman. It didn't quite work that way. I didn't run for Cleveland councilman until I was 23 years old. I came in 4th out of 7 candidates within the race, but I didn't stop there. Every city, every municipality that you live in have what you call precinct committee people. So every neighborhood you live in is chopped up into little precincts, little sections like block clubs or street clubs that many people have in their neighborhoods. And so in Cleveland, the precinct people held the power. They were the people who ensured that you got endorsed by your local political party. So I said, you know what? I'm going to run my own slate of precinct committee people against the current councilman so that once I do this again, I will be set. I will have that support needed to be successful next time. So I ran all 16 people. I won all 16 seats. So before I came to class at Cleveland State, I was knocking on doors, dropping literature on people's mailboxes about the candidates that I ran for those seats. When I got out of class, I went home, did homework, and I was back on the street knocking on doors again and dropping more literature about those candidates that I ran for those offices. Election night come, we swept all 16 seats. The councilman is worried now, so he'll get a call the next day. Can we meet for breakfast? No. I'm young, I have to play hardball. They can push over you. So we went through that process, became the ward leader of my ward, which is the person who determines who gets the endorsements from the local party. Went through that process, worked with a man named Julian Rogers who ran for county council in this seat. Julian decided to resign and take another position, so I decided to go back. And those relationships that they talk about, it was those same relationships that I had built with those individuals I ran is how I was selected to become the county council person for District 10. So that is just a gloss over of my story.
We are out of time, so thank you. Very
Thank
impressive.
you.
Okay, so it was very impressive, very inspiring, and all of you have been leaders and innovators and entrepreneurs and gone through diverse environments. So that is something which is very, very motivating and deeply inspiring, and it touches us, all of us. So with that, we are a bit behind on time. We have about 20 minutes left. So there are some questions which have been given, and I would request you, there are 4 questions, so I would request you to kindly hold yourself to 5 minutes per question. The first person who I'll ask the question to will have 3 minutes to answer that, and then after that, any one of you can join in for total about 2 minutes, so total of 5 minutes for the questions. So the first question goes to Ms. Hayes, and because she is at Cleveland Clinic, and Cleveland Clinic is making a lot of global advances and expansion. So the question to you is, how can students best prepare while at CSU to compete in an increasingly global business environment? what does Cleveland have to offer in terms of opportunity?
Thank you very much, Dr. Dixit. We have at Cleveland Clinic, clearly with our global presence, a number of opportunities. So I want to address this on the student opportunity level as well as on the professional career level. For students in your position right now, there are internship programs, there are shadow experiences, and then there are just plain old opportunities to follow in the media and to follow online and to find a professional who is doing what you think you aspire to do, or to find an area that you think is of interest to you. As Anthony mentioned, relationships. Our internships provide substantive opportunities for students to work shoulder to shoulder, whether it's lab on the clinical side or also in internships where they're working with professionals who are on the administrative side of what we do. Anthony mentioned Al Lerner's building. Actually, that's the campus where my office is located right now. It's now the Cleveland Clinic Administrative Campus. And trust me, you can still see the presence of Al Lerner there and all that he built as he was building a global organization. The opportunities that we have allow you to spend time with career professionals in structured internship learning programs to let you see if this might possibly be a right fit. Additionally, it's also a chance for you to see, okay, I'm on track right now to earn a degree in business, or I'm on track right now for a degree in sociology, marketing, communications, whatever it may be. Am I taking the classes? Am I getting the experience? Am I going after the summer or part-time jobs that I need to support me? What sort of certifications might I need? Do I need to go to graduate school before I come back and apply? So those are the sorts of experiences that we have. Let's fast forward now to what we are doing, which is getting clearly a lot of attention, and that's building and getting ready to open. It's built. We're getting ready to open our hospital in Abu Dhabi. Wonderful opportunity. It's all sorts of firsts when it comes to building in that part of the world. And what we've done is we've taken Cleveland Clinic and our healthcare model and we've moved it over to Abu Dhabi. And there with the Mubadala Corporation, literally rising up out of the sand is going to be this world-class healthcare facility. We're bringing in physicians, nurses, and clinicians and administrators from all over the world to come work there. We are being very respectful of their culture and all of the needs for that region, but we're also making sure that we integrate all that is Cleveland Clinic. So when patients come through the door, they're getting a Cleveland Clinic experience. I've brought information about Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, as well as our pipeline programs. And so it's back there on the table, so please make sure that you pick it up. What would I recommend? Internships, shadowing experiences, staying connected to whatever organizations it is that you think you might want to be a part of at Cleveland Clinic and other healthcare organizations to learn what might be the next right steps for you.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Thank you very much. And we have a little bit of time crunch, so we'll move on to the next question. That goes to Robert. How do businesses use diversity and inclusion to drive innovation and creativity? And how can our students use their unique talents to their advantage? So Mr. Romero, you are at NASA, which is the hub of innovation, so we'd like you to talk about 3 minutes.
And I'm going to talk about it along the lines of what is innovation, because oftentimes we don't spend much time thinking about that. We know what it is when we see it, but we really don't know what it is. But at NASA, there's some common themes or terms that are used, nouns that we use when we talk about innovation, and I want to share them with you because it's important. One is game changing. We're always talking about what's the next steps that we're going to take. Another term is cutting edge. We want to be the best at what we do. We can't afford to allow for risk to take place. Revolutionary, that's another term. Transformation. and breakthrough. Those are the key terms and nouns that we use when we talk about innovation. But then what is innovation? Innovation, in the simplest term, is a new method, idea, or product. Okay? Now that you know what it is, business that innovate create more efficient work processes and have better productivity and performances. That's what it's all about. Now, how do we do that along the lines of diversity and inclusion, which is the key thing here? Well, when we think about innovation or new ideas or creativity, from a diversity standpoint, we want folks to have a diverse background. They can bring the terms I've used already, bring in new ideas, new product, and new methods to the workplace. That's the kind of those are the kinds of people we look for to come work at NASA, and we want that creative and innovative mind. When we talk about inclusion, we talk about having an inclusive work environment that permits the opportunity for new ideas and new methods. I'm a business capture manager. Prior to that, I used to be the director of diversity and equal opportunity at NASA Glenn for 9 years. And all that I learned about new ideas and innovation come from the diverse groups of individuals that I work with. They bring in new ideas. And as a result, I built new relationships. I was able to gain new relationships as a result of that. So for me, the key here is if you're a student and you're looking to innovate, you're looking to work for an organization that innovates, you need to go out and you need to start to build those relationships from people that not necessarily you know. You want to know other people. You want to know new ideas. You want to bring in new concepts and new perspectives. Because all those skill sets that you gain when you're a student, working in again, I encourage student organizational involvement. I encourage professional association involvement, the AMA, American Marketing Association. Or SHRM. I'm putting a couple of plugs for those organizations, or diverse organizations like Hispanic student organizations, Black student organizations, women organizations. Get involved. Make yourself want to feel a little bit uncomfortable, because when you feel uncomfortable, things will be good for you, because that generates you to think about how you look at the world and look at how you do things from the standpoint of business. So that's my cut at what I think in terms of innovation.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So what you are hearing is that diversity is also about creativity, and all these new ideas, they are coming and people are innovating because they're thinking in a different way, in a diverse way. So not just sticking with the old ideas and the old way of doing things, but getting into diversity, thinking different. So that is something which is very, very important. That's what I'm hearing. And all of you are leaders and innovators and entrepreneurs. So let's go to the third question, and that goes to Ms. Linda. And she's been serving on various companies, and so what is on the company's wish list of talent or skills for new employees and future leaders? What is a characteristic every emerging leader should possess?
Okay, when I was chair of the business school at Baldwin Wallace, a big part of my job was to be out in the community talking to employers, talking to businesses, to make sure that the business programs were relevant to helping the student get a job at the end of the day, right? That's really what we're about here, right? We're trying to get you guys ready to be out in the world and make yourself a good living. Well, I would sit down, and after a little chit chat, I'd say, so tell me, Chris, what disappoints you the most about college graduates today? Notice I said the word disappoints you, right? And he said, lack of critical thinking skills and lack of effective verbal and written presentation skills, communication skills. Okay? So I figured, well, that's easy enough to fix. Just tell the professors, teach them how to critically think and teach them how to talk and write effectively. Well, it's easier said than done, but those are the two. So I would ask Chris that question. Then I'd meet Tom and I'd ask Tom that question. Then I'd meet Eleanor and she would tell me the same thing. It was unanimous. And it isn't just Cleveland State students, it's Baldwin Wallace students, it's Case students, it's every student. They also want well-rounded students. They want you to have perspectives, you know, and to have been exposed to diverse situations, not just ethnicity. We're talking age, we're talking economic status, we're talking all kinds of, get yourself immersed in all kinds of different things, get out of your comfort zone and try different things. Having a language as maybe a minor, that could be possibly, if you are interested in global work, having some kind of a language that you're proficient at would be also a plus for employers and what they're looking for. The other thing that I would say is that what we focused on at BW was a mindset of innovation and a mindset of leadership. Understanding how to be a leader or how to be a follower. If you're not a leader, how do you follow? How are you effective in an organization? How can you work in effective work teams? Because that is how it's done in business. Knowing how to work on effective work, being an effective member of a work team. So those would be that's what I hear. And if you asked me what characteristics every emerging leader should possess, it's really knowing yourself, and you have to know yourself before you become an effective leader or an emerging leader.
Okay, thank you so much. And then the last question goes to Anthony, and you have just 2 minutes for this, so I'll just stop you at 2 minutes because you're almost out of time. So Anthony, what would you think, like you are the youngest of us all, so what is your biggest piece of advice for the students, and especially about those who are uncertain about their major and what they're going to do in life? So please restrict yourself to 1 or 2 sentences, and then we'll open up for the student questions.
Thank you. First thing, this is something I was told to me many years ago. Don't panic. Do not panic. Take a deep breath, think about it, and again, do not panic. Yeah, I know it seems easier said than done, but you can do it. Don't panic. Take a step back, think about it, and then do it. First of all, know your abilities, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know what you are good at, and go from there. Thirdly, I would say look at what you value in terms of work, whether it be helping people, whether it be working well under pressure, whether it be specific group affiliations, etc. Those are always good things. And really, what major that you decide, what will allow you to do? You know, what job can you get? What career path can you chart with that degree? Build relationships along the way. So those internships and those shadows that Ms. Hayes talked about, those are critical. Those are important because that's how you build the relationships. That's how you're able to return to that employer and say, listen, remember me? And then ask for that job. And be realistic. Really, be realistic. Really, if you're not good at math, why would you consider being a CPA? You know, why? I mean, really. If you are not good in mathematics, why look to being a specific type of engineer? It just do not work. Be realistic of what it is you want to do. And at the end of that, evaluate all of those things. Evaluate your abilities, what you value in work, what would your major allow you to do, and evaluate the realistically of things that you have the abilities to do.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Very impressive. So now I'll open up for the students for questions. You have about 2-3 minutes, so maybe we can take 2 questions. So any questions from the students? Yes.
Ms. Lisa, I understand that when you get the job or the internship, you can show off your critical thinking skills, and it will be very apparent whether you have them or not. But going through the resume process, what would be some things to highlight on a resume to prove that you have these critical thinking skills?
The question was, how do you highlight your intern experiences on a resume? Or how do you highlight critical thinking skills on your resume? Well, I think if you are working on projects that involve critical thinking skills, I think it's a nice way to bullet point those, like a sentence or two about a project or a paper that you wrote about, and to just basically bring light to the fact that you did something and you're developing your critical thinking skills. I think that's nice to put on a resume. It's about, I think resumes get the attention of employers where they show accomplishments, not a chronological. Here from this date to this date I worked here. From this date to this date I worked here, and this was my job title. Gone are those things. It's about competencies. So that's a great question. And I would also encourage you that if there is some kind of career center here at Cleveland State, I'm assuming there is, take advantage of those opportunities to go learn how to write a resume and how to get connected. And they always have job boards. I'm sure you have a job board and where there's opportunities. So that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, we still have a minute, so let me thank our sponsors, the Office of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement and the Monte College of Business, the Dean's Diversity Council, Dr. Hirnak, for arranging all this and for her hard work and putting it all together. I wish to thank all the panelists for their time and for their deep, insightful knowledge. And it was highly inspiring, and it touches somewhere your heart to the core as how they've gone through all this difficulties in their life and how they embrace the diversity and how they have been creative and innovative. And we got a lot of examples from all of the panelists that how they have come up and with their leadership skills and including diversity. So that is something which is very, very inspiring. Thank you very much, all of you, and let's give them a big round of applause.